In this video, we're going to talk about correlation. And correlation is the relationship between two variables. And the closer the variables are related, the greater the correlation or the higher the correlation there is. So correlations actually come in two things when we talk about correlation. We talk about whether they are positive, negative, or no correlation. So this is what we consider the direction. So the direction of the correlation, is it positive? So in other words, is it going upward from left to right? Or is it a negative correlation, so it's going downward from left to right? Or there's no correlation. In other words, there's no distinct pattern in which um, the, the relationship, the points of the graph are being drawn. And then the other thing that correlation tells us is the strength of the correlation. We can either have a strong correlation, a weak correlation, or in some cases we also call a moderate correlation. Okay, so someplace in the middle. And so in terms of direction of correlation, we're looking at the points themselves. And are they going in that upward direction? Are they going in a downward direction or no direction at all? Strength is stated in terms of what we call the correlation coefficient. And the correlation coefficient, also known as R value or just simply the correlation value, all those are interchangeable words, states the strength of that correlation. Okay, the stronger that number, the closer that number or that value is to 1 or -1, the greater the strength. The stronger the correlation, the stronger the association is. So in general speaking, and this is not a standard by any means, so this is a positive correlation. So from numbers between, say, usually about 0.8 to 1 are considered a strong correlation. A moderate positive correlation are somewhere between, say, about 0.5 to 0.79. A weak correlation is somewhere between, generally speaking, from about a 0.25 to 0.49. And then no correlation is usually below, or between, I guess I should really say between. So it's usually between, say, a negative 0.25 to a positive 0.25, somewhere around there. Likewise, if we have a weak correlation that is a negative correlation, those numbers would be somewhere between negative 0.25 to negative 0.49. A moderately negative correlation, again, would be negatives of the positive value, so negative 0.5 to, right, this is 2, a negative here, to negative 0.79, and a strong negative correlation is negative 0.8 to negative 1. And then, so we want to address, so the correlation tells us those two things, direction and strength. So when we write our sentences, we're going to talk about guessing correlations. So in this particular case, on the right-hand side here, we have a negative correlation. It looks to be fairly moderate. We're just going to guess what that number is. But these points are close to this line of best fit. So this is called a line of best fit. And this line of best fit is the line that best approximates the data. And we would say, so as the amount of wine consumed increases. Okay, so we're getting more wine consumed. The heart disease death, so the number of heart disease deaths decreases with a moderate association. Okay, so that's how we would write our sentence in terms of what does this correlation mean. So now let's look at a couple of other examples. And the first example I want to show you is here where we have the amount. So these are restaurant tips. So the amount of the bill and the amount of the tip. And notice that each one of these points, so this point right here indicates that the bill is $6.69 and the tip was $1. So each one of these are ordered pairs. This particular one would be $22.47 is the bill, $4 is the tip. This random one up here near the top is $23.70 for the bill and $10 tip. We have a couple here, $55.59 with a $10 tip. So notice that these are going in a upright direction, so the correlation value is positive. And they're close to this, what we call regression line or line of best fit. If I show this line here, you will see that the points generally are pretty close to this particular line. So this is a very strong association, and it's a positive association. So as the amount of the bill increases, the tip amount also increases with a very strong or just a strong positive correlation. In this next example, this time we have a bunch of points, but they're going in a downward point, kind of downward towards the right. This time is field goal percentage of NBA players along the bottom, along the horizontal axis, and the free throw percentage along the vertical axis. It does not make any difference as to which variable you put on which axis, as long as you have one on each one of them. This time, if we show the line of best fit, you can see that the points are very scattered along this line. And we can see that the correlation is negative. It's 0.358. And if we go back and look, negative 0.358 is somewhere in the weak association area. If we look at one more example here, here is a very random set of points. This is talking about intensive care admissions, the systolic, and the heart rate. So the heart rate and its systolic values are here. So this is somebody with 112 as their heart rate, so beats per minute, and then a systolic of 92. If we try and project a line of best fit, you can see this is very flat because there's no association here. It's a slightly negative, but we probably can't even see that with the naked eye. And we're going to go at a very, very weak, and actually this would be considered no correlation because the value is 0.057. You don't have to worry about how this number is found. It's just automatically going to be given to us in terms of the work that we're going to be doing. Now there's also a way you can practice. You'll see that there's a link in the note sheet for guessing correlations. That's this particular web page here where you can play around and you can try and um, check your knowledge in terms of whether these are positive correlation values, so or R values, whichever way you want to say it. So if I look at these three are going in a downward direction. This one is going in a positive direction, so I know this answer has to be 0.91. I'm also looking to recognize that these are fairly lining up. However, if I compare this bottom right one to the top right one, even though one is negative, one is positive, these points are more closely aligned in a line, and so this would probably be a 0.98 because it's closest to the -1. And now we have these two, and again, they're both negative, and so our choices are -0.5 and -0.79. This graph on the top left appears to be more closely aligned than the one on the bottom. So the one on the bottom right, I'm sorry, bottom left would probably be a -0.5. Top left, this is at -0.79. I can check my answer, and I check to see if it was correct, and then I can get new plots and try again. So I can do this as many times as needed.